Welcome to Taisha's Kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make Anko or red bean paste. So Anko is pretty much the base for almost all Japanese sweets. And this is made from Azuki beans. You may not be able to find these Azuki beans in a small Asian market, but if you go to like a medium size or a large Asian supermarket, then you'll definitely be able to find this. And I do hear that some Westerns don't like this Anko because they don't like to have beans sweetened. But I know there are a lot of people who actually like this as well. And today I'm going to show you two variations of Anko, Tsubu-An and Koshi-An. Even though these are both made from Azuki beans, they have a very different flavor. It's also a very personal thing. For example, my father loves Tsubu-An and not really so much the Koshi-An. I, the opposite, I love the Koshi-An, and my mother doesn't really care. She likes both. And it also depends on which sweets that you're going to make. Tsubu-An has like more wild, rough flavor, and Koshi-An is more elegant, fine flavor. So if you want a little comparison, you could compare Tsubu-An as like a rugby or American football, and Koshi-An like chess. So they're just very different things, and even though these are just games played by people. And I do admit, making Anko takes quite a lot of steps, but a lot of it is just waiting, and the process themselves are not complicated. So if you like Japanese sweets, I hope you give this a try. Then, let's get started. Here are the ingredients for two types of Anko. So here I have what's called Azuki beans. I've never heard of this red cowpeas. They're usually known as Azuki beans. I also have regular sugar. Then also surprisingly we'll be using a little bit of salt. This kind of helps bring out the sweetness more. Then let's start cooking. So today I want to make two types of Anko. And for that I'll be using 200 each of Azuki beans. So altogether 400 grams. So I'm going to measure that first. And now here we have 400 grams of Azuki beans. So the first thing you kind of want to inspect the beans. So depending on the quality, they might have like a deformed beans or like beans that have bad color. They tend to give out like bad flavor. So you want to just kind of skim through and kind of these eaten up beans. So these kind of like deformed or like bad colored beans you want to get rid of. So a little fun fact about Azuki beans, because these beans are very, very dense, they sometimes use this to make sound for the theater. Like they use like this to imitate the rain, or if you like have a big bowl, you can use it. I don't know if it sounds like to you guys, but it sounds like an ocean wave, supposedly. And now I'm gonna quickly wash this with running water. And then fill this with water. A lot more than just to cover their beans. And by the way, another fun fact about Azuki beans, there's a Japanese ghost or yokai called Azuki Arai. They just kind of make these sounds and scare little kids. I don't think they'll do anything bad, but we have those ghosts or yokai or entities in Japan quite a lot. Now let's cook the Azuki beans. For about 400 grams of Azuki beans, I have here about a liter of water. I'm going to turn the heat to high and then bring this to boil. So once this has come to boil, I'm going to turn the heat to low. Then I'm going to set the timer to 10 minutes. And cook like this in low heat for 10 minutes. So the 10 minutes has passed. I'm going to turn the heat off. When you see this cooking water, you see it's red brown, and I'm going to throw this away because it's very bitter, and this bitterness we don't want for the Anko. And we're going to put this back in here. And then put in here another liter of water. And turn heat to high. And bring this to boil again. And this boiled water from cooking Azuki beans, very bitter, and we don't want that bitterness for the Anko. But if we drink this as tea, it's very healthy because it's got a lot of nutrients in them. You can put a little bit of sugar in them if you don't like the bitterness, or straight up like this. So I'm gonna have a little taste. So this is actually very tasty. You can try this Azuki tea when you make Anko yourself. Once this comes to boil, I'm going to turn the heat to low, and then we're going to keep cooking like this for about an hour. So I'm going to set the timer to 60 minutes. But if we keep cooking like this for 1 hour, then the water will evaporate and it will start burning. So you have to keep adding a little bit of water so that you always have water every 15 to 20 minutes. So make sure there's always water when you're cooking this. So all the beans has been cooked thoroughly. As you can see, you can squeeze them with your finger like this, and this is ready. And then I'm gonna drain the water one last time. And this water I'm gonna throw away. So the Azuki beans are cooked thoroughly, and then I'm gonna separate this into two parts so that I can make Tsubu-An and Koshi-An. So this is about the same amount. Then I'm gonna start making the Tsubu-An first. So in order to make the Tsubu-An, I just need to smush these beans like this. Just like this with a spoon. And then here I'm gonna add in some sugar. So for 200 grams of dried Azuki beans, you usually add in the same amount of sugar, which is 200 grams, but I kind of like it a little bit less sweet, so I'm gonna add in 150 grams of sugar. So perfect. And here I'm gonna add in about 2 to 3 tablespoons of water so that it'll be easier to mix up and heat up. Then we're gonna turn the heat to low. And with low heat, I'm gonna heat this up and just keep mixing like this. And once you start seeing these bubbles, I'm gonna turn the heat to low. And I'm gonna keep cooking like this for 10 minutes or so until it's not so soupy anymore. You want to make sure that you're constantly mixing this, otherwise the bottom will start burning, and that's something you definitely want to avoid. So after about 5 to 10 minutes or so, as you can see, the Anko is already less soupy, so you don't see like liquid parts. And so this is finished. I'm going to turn the heat off. And this is finished for Tsubu-An. So you might think this is a little bit too soupy, too runny, but don't worry, after when it gets cooled down, then this will be less runny. I'm gonna let this cool off. I'm gonna have a little taste. This is really good. And then I'm gonna put this on the side and let it cool off. Now let's make Koshi-An with the other half of the Azuki beans. So making Koshi-An is a lot more complicated process. You have to do a lot more processing. And the first process is getting rid of the skin. And the way to do that is let it run through a sieve. So I'm just gonna put a quarter or so of it of the beans and then smush it here through the sieve. And then you see from the other side you have a very fine, only the inside part of the Azuki beans. So I'm gonna keep doing that. And it also helps to add a little bit of water to this. And then on the colander you only have the skin. And this we're gonna throw away. It may seem like a waste, but to make a fine Koshi-An, that's necessary. I usually just put this in a compost. And I'm gonna keep doing that for the rest of the Azuki beans. So now here we have only the inside of the Anko. And we have quite a lot of skin left. This you just have to throw away or put it in compost. And then now what I'm gonna do is let it run through the sieve a couple more times. If you have a finer sieve or a colander, then you should definitely use that. But I don't have such things, and for home cooking, you don't necessarily have to get those. You may think this may not bring anything, but let's see what happens. So you have some parts that's a little coarser, you have left here in the colander. And you only want these really fine particle. So even through a second time, you can get rid of these coarse particle of the Azuki beans. And then I'm gonna let this run through the sieve a couple more times. You'll be surprised even after the third time, you have some coarse particle. And for the fourth time, and for the fifth and the last time, I'm gonna let it run through one more time. As you can see, there's still a little bit of more coarse particle here. And here I'm gonna add some water, then kind of mix it up. And what we're gonna do now is let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes or so and let the particle separate from the water. And you can kind of see it's already starting to separate. And then what we want to do is we want to get rid of this top water. And we do this in order to get rid of that last bitterness, last tanginess of the Azuki beans. So about 10 minutes has passed. I'm gonna throw away this top part of the water. So very slowly that you don't get rid of the bottom part. So just about that much. And then here I'm gonna add in some more water. Mix it a little bit and repeat the process 2 more times. Well, 10 minutes has passed. We're gonna throw away the water again. And in this, I'm gonna add some more water again and let this sit one last time. So after another 10 minutes or so, you can see the water is much clearer in compared to the first time. I'm gonna throw away this water for the one last time. And after the last wash, what we're gonna do is drain all the water using a colander and paper towel. I'm gonna add a little more water to this so that I don't waste anything. And then using this paper towel, I'm going to squeeze in all the water that's left inside here. Very gently so that you don't break the paper towel. And then what you left is only the fine inside of the Azuki beans. In this pot, I'm gonna put in the rest of the Azuki beans. You can see this kind of dried Azuki paste. And you may think after washing this so many times that there's no flavor left. You'd be surprised how much of the flavor is still left in this very fine particle of the Azuki beans. Now let's finally mix in the sugar. So for 200 grams of dried Azuki beans, we're going to put in 100 grams to 150 grams of sugar, depending on how sweet you want it. I personally prefer that it's not too sweet, so I'm going to put in 100 grams, but if you like it sweeter, you can put in 150 grams or more of sugar. So perfectly 100 grams. And in this, I'm going to put in 2 to 3 tablespoons of water, so that it'll be easier to be mixed. And then we're going to put this on the stove and heat it up with medium heat. And make sure you keep mixing like this the whole time, otherwise the bottom will start burning. And then once it starts forming bubbles like this, I'm going to turn the heat low and cook like this for 5 to 10 minutes or so and let the water vaporize so that you have less soupy Anko. So when you're mixing like this, you may want to wear gloves because when the bubbles pop, it splashes this really hot liquid. It might burn you. For me, I'm used to getting burnt. It doesn't really bother me, but if you're a beginner, then you might want to wear gloves. So after a while, when the Anko doesn't run and drop like this as a clump, then this is finished. I'm gonna turn the heat off. I'm gonna have a little taste. It's really hot, so be careful. Oh, so elegant. So flavorful. Now I'm gonna set this to the side and let it sit and cool off. Now we have both Tsubu-An and Koshi-An cooled off. Let's see this. This is perfectly the viscosity that we want. Let's see the Koshi-An. Oh, this is also great. Now let's put these in a container. So you only get like a 2/3 of the Koshi-An and compare the Tsubu-An with the same amount of Azuki beans. That's because of all this skin. But nonetheless, Koshi-An is definitely worth making, especially when you're making some sweets like manju or when you're making fruit Daifuku, fruit mochi. So that's the end of this video. So making Anko is a pretty long process. It usually takes more than 2 hours for the Koshi-An, 3-4 hours for the Tsubu-An, but it's definitely worth the effort. So I hope you give this a try. The handmade Tsubu-An or Koshi-An, depending on the amount of sugar, you can store them in the fridge for 5 days or so, or you can put them in the freezer, and then you can pretty much enjoy it up to like a couple months to half a year. When I make Anko myself, I make a big portion and then store it in the fridge or freezer and save it for later. And once you have Anko, you can pretty much make almost all Japanese sweets. And like I said, Koshi-An or Tsubu-An is pretty much a preference thing. Most of the recipes are interchangeable, but some recipe one matches better than the other. For example, like regular Daifuku-mochi, Taiyaki, or monaka. These are mostly made with Tsubu-An, but other things like Daifuku-mochi with fruits in them, or amman or manju, or those decorative wagashi known as nerikiri. Those are primarily made with Koshi-An. And other things you can make with both, like Dango or Dorayaki or regular manju, and you'll find either one of them. This also depends on where you live in Japan. So I hope this was helpful and hopefully you give this a try someday. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you could hit that like button so that this video can be spread out to many people. And if you have any questions or even critiques, please feel free to write anything in the comments below. Otherwise, I look forward to see you in the next video. Bye!